Saul Rubinek has had a long career on stage and screen and television. He stars as Murray Markowitz in the Amazon series Hunters. I'm Tony Ruiz of Gold Derby. And Saul, I had read that you had some hesitation about taking on this role. What was that hesitation, and how did you ultimately decide to do it?
Well, I didn't really have a hesitation because I auditioned for it. So it wasn't like I was offered it, read it, and said, I'm not so sure about this. No, I once I had read it and knew what it was doing, I had a feeling, and I'd heard about it before because, being a part of people who are up for jobs and know about the show, there's gossip about it, and I knew that it was interesting. If there was any hesitation at all, I was wondering whether or not the tone of the piece was going to trivialize the Holocaust. My parents are Holocaust survivors, were Holocaust survivors. I was born in a refugee camp after the Second World War and lost a lot of family. My parents were hidden during the war by Polish farmers, and in 1986 I went back with them to Poland to have a reunion with the people that had hidden them during the war, and made a documentary film called So Many Miracles that I did in collaboration with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. So it's been a part of my life. I wrote a book about my parents and the documentary. It's how I introduced my children to this subject. And so there was a concern, of course, that how is this going to be treated? Because I knew we weren't doing a very straightforward drama. But when I read a few scenes that I saw, and I talked to a lot of people, I knew this was going to be a very high-class project. I think at that point I knew that Al Pacino was involved, so it was certainly not going to be anything shoddy. It was going to be something really interesting, and I had a feeling I was born to play it because I was going to be playing a survivor whose first language was Yiddish. My first language happens to be Yiddish. And when I got cast opposite Carol Kane, who is such an extraordinary actress who I'd never met, who's going to be playing my wife, and then I got into the show, I could see that, yes, the tone was going to be a little bit out there. It's going to be out of the box. They were going to try various really interesting and provocative techniques in order to get people interested in the subject matter of revenge. Not just revenge against Nazis. I realized very quickly that that's not what the show is about. Although on the surface, that's the headline. It's really about the consequences of revenge on the people partaking of it and those problems. A very emotional show that I began to feel I was born to play, especially after my daughter Hannah was cast as my daughter Hannah. Yeah, so no, I really didn't have a hesitation. I was like anybody, I would have been concerned about whether the tone would be, whether the tone was going to be, somehow trivializing to the subject. But it doesn't. It's a provocative. I would say it's far more provocative than anything else.
Yeah, and you kind of fed into something that I wanted to really touch on, was that, this show is definitely more than just about, Nazis in America. It really is about revenge and the consequences and the cost, kind of emotionally, of revenge. And your character in particular has this arc where he actually gets the opportunity to exact revenge. So what do you think the toll of loss and revenge was for your character, for Murray?
Well, we all are part of an ad hoc group of vigilantes that are put together by Al Pacino's character. When we find out that there are, Nazis living in America. Now, this is based on a true thing called Operation Paperclip that happened after the war, where the American government, anticipating a battle with Russia, took the highest-ranking scientific brains that they could get of the Nazi regime and brought them to America and paper-clipped their backgrounds. Once the background was removed from the file, you could see the imprint of the paperclip, which is why it was called Operation Paperclip. So they hid their backgrounds, including, for example, Werner von Braun, who was introduced to the American public by Walt Disney and died a hero in America, being part of the space program here, but was in fact an SS officer who built the V-2 rocket that killed thousands of people. And the people that built the rocket in the concentration camp half a mile away from the factory that built the V-2, over 20,000 people died or were murdered building his rocket. He died a hero here, and there were many others like him. Now, the show takes on the premise that there are many, many more, and that there's a Fourth Reich being planned, and that there's a conspiracy that this group doesn't know about when they start taking revenge, but they soon discover it. My character takes, so he was part of this revenge, basically trying to mitigate justice. Trying to not mitigate it, trying to effect justice on these people, that justice was denied. But personally, he finds out one of the people that they're after, one of the people he has an opportunity to revenge himself on, has a very personal connection to deaths in his own family. And when you're confronted with something like that, you don't know what you're going to do until the moment that it happens. I'm not going to reveal what happens, but it's profound. These are kind of revenge fantasies in a way, just as Inglourious Bastards is a kind of revenge fantasy. There were, of course, people who did take revenge in life, not organized like they did in Hunters, but throughout history and even now, people there that exists. Vigilantism, people who believe that they're justified in doing this for whatever reason. But what visits you when you look into the darkness of the abyss of revenge and violence is that the abyss looks back at you. You yourself can turn as dark as the monsters that you're hunting.
Well, and in that kind of sense of darkness, when you play a role like this, is this, actors have different processes and how they approach their roles, and sometimes I've talked to actors who say that a certain character kind of stays with them, or an experience stays with them. Was this an easy character to put away at the end of the day, or did it kind of, follow you home at night?
I think it had been following me home at night since I was a kid, before I knew that there was a character. I mean, I was, in a way, when I say I was born to play it, I mean, look, it's been a part of my life. I'm an only child. I had an older sister that was born before me, that died. There was really at birth during the war. I have, dozens of relatives that were murdered. I grew up with these stories way before I was old enough to understand the context of it, like a lot of Jewish children are told about the Holocaust, not just Jewish children, of course, whether you're Native American, African American, Armenian, whatever Holocaust people have gone through. Very often the children don't know the time when they didn't know that there was some grave and vast injustice perpetrated on their people before they even have an understanding of what it is. So I grew up with it. It's been part of my life. I just wrote a play, actually, called All in the Telling, which is about how I came to write a book and make a documentary film, with my parents. So I told you about what the consequences of doing that were on 3 generations of my family. So I grew up with it. So it's always been with me. So as an actor, every single role, I don't believe really that there is I'm sure that there are common denominators about how to approach a role. I'm a fairly untrained actor, having done it since I was 7 years old doing showbiz theater. The only training I ever really got was from 2 wonderful teachers when I was a little boy. These 2 wonderful teachers were graduates of the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts in London from RADA. And I was in Ottawa, Ontario as a 7, 8-year-old taking lessons. Other than that, every single role I approach differently depending on who's doing it, what the play is. Every single project is different, of course. So in this in this place, I just needed to stay out of my own way, because the accent, which is one I grew up with, a Polish Jewish accent, something that I couldn't slip into easily. My first language is Yiddish, which is the same as this character. It's really interesting how it was, in a way, it was easier for it to leave me at the end of the day than any other character, because I'd been living with the subject matter for so long. Now, that said, there were days that were extremely emotional with Carol Kane and I, and the way the script was written. There were some beautiful emotional scenes that I couldn't leave at the end of the day, especially when there was my daughter's wedding, and the daughter who was getting married was my daughter Hannah, who was playing the role of Amy. And we were all, she was in New York, sharing an apartment with me during the shoot, and we were all together. It was, it became it was not so easy to leave the role, especially on those emotional days.
Yeah. And I just have to ask this, because the relationship between you and Carol Kane is so, it feels so lived in. It feels so natural. And you had said earlier you two had never worked together before. And so is there a way that you guys build that relationship, that you are able, you guys clearly seemed like you had known each other forever, and that these two characters had been through everything together. How did you guys go about building that?
I think it was right from the very first moment of being on screen with her. First of all, I saw Carol Kane first in a movie called Hester Street that she did when she was 21, 22 years old, for which she was nominated for a Best Actress Award when she was that young, playing a character completely in Yiddish. And I'd never seen a movie that was in Yiddish, an American movie. It's an indie movie called Hester Street, where she did it. She told me phonetically, and she was amazing to me because I understood Yiddish. So I'd seen her, 45 years earlier or whatever it was, do this. And I'd seen her countless times. So that was pretty cool that I admired her for so long and thought she was wonderful. And then as soon as we were on screen together, Carol is very much in the moment immediately on screen. And I thought, she raised the bar. Mind you, I was surrounded by a cast of people, all extraordinary actors, at the top of their game. And what happens to you as an actor when you're in the midst of such accomplished, generous performers is that you rise to that level. And so Carol and I never really, didn't have to go out to go bond somewhere. Our experiences, both of us, over 50 years of acting together, there was an immediate shorthand about what was required. And we kind of knew. Now, this is an old truism about acting, and I'm sure any actor, you've heard actors say this a lot. You really can't do it if the material isn't there.
Right.
I mean, you're spending a lot of time. Actors have to find a way to deal with substandard material and try to lift it somehow. And sometimes you're in a circumstance where everybody knows it's substandard material. People collaborate, and it ends up not being substandard at all. It ends up being amazing, and you'd never know. In this case, the material was extraordinary. The writing was delicious and thought-provoking and emotional and provocative and interesting, surrounded by great actors. That's when acting becomes really, you got to show up, and be there. And it becomes the easiest thing in the world to do. So I also felt, watching the show, we watched it together as a family. My son Sam, my wife Eleanor, and Hannah and I are all here together in LA right now. And we all watched it together. And I saw too, I said, it looks like we've been married for 50 years. This looks like a couple. It's not something we tried. We thought we'd even talked about. I think it just happened with a combination of great writing and the fact that we kind of knew what to do. And also, as I say, she's such an extraordinary performer, Carol, that just being with her, you're immediately, I was immediately there. I was Murray. There was no question about it, you know, and we felt it.
Yeah. I have to ask also about, you know, you've had the kind of career that I think a lot of actors, you know, don't necessarily always have the luxury to go back and forth between, you know, theater and writing and film and television. And so because you've had such a long career, are there certain things that people just recognize you instantly from? Like, I'm sure you have people that recognize you from Frasier or from Unforgiven, or then you get people that know you from Warehouse 13, or, you know, like I first knew of you when you did the guest spot on Star Trek: The Next Generation. So having that type of flexibility, what has that allowed you in terms of the opportunities that you've had?
You know, I think like most actors, it's really just a question. All you really want to do is work. Hang on one sec. Hey, guys. Hello? Guys? You can't talk for a minute. Just okay? Oh, sorry. Are we still here?
Right. Yeah.
I think like most actors, all you're really interested in is working. You know, you're just going. I wasn't looking for a career. I wasn't looking for even. I just was interested in paying the rent, and I did 20 years of theater before I set foot in front of a camera. So from 7 or 8 till 28, I was doing theater, and then started working on Canadian television, and came to New York in my late 20s, and became an American actor as well. But yeah, I'm recognized from Star Trek: The Next Generation, from Frasier, from Unforgiven, from Family Man, from True Romance quite often. A movie that really didn't do very well when it first came out, but has kind of become a cult classic, right? And then, of course, one of the great experiences of my career was doing Warehouse 13, because it was such a wonderful group of people, and especially the showrunner, Jack Kenny, who became and has become a really good friend of mine, and the opportunity to work on a role for 5 years, I'd never had that opportunity. But even now, we use Frasier as a comfort food as a family. When we're together and we just want to relax and just have comfort, we watch Frasier, and then, oh my God, I'm on this show. Wait, that's me. I forgot I was. Frasier was really, you're talking about being recognized. You know, Frasier was a really interesting experience for me, because that's a show I didn't audition for. I was offered like 3 episodes, and because it turned into over 2 years of working on the show as a recurring character, it was such a tight-knit group of people, and it was like doing a little one-act play for a couple of hundred people in the studio audience, and that's how it felt. I remember going to Vegas with a buddy of mine, just on a getaway trip, to go shoot some craps and play some poker. And we drove there, checked into the hotel, and I could barely cross the lobby. I forgot that 20 million people a week tune into the show. And I forgot, I didn't think of it. That, of course, I'm on this massive show. That had never happened to me before. I'd been recognized here and there for different things. But having been going from the check-in desk to the elevator took over almost an hour, because of the people there that had seen me on Frasier. That was the first time I really understood the power of being on a hit show on television. I never, idiotically, I didn't think of it before. You know.
No, and now you're.
I don't know about the opportunity. When you're talking about opportunities, of course, when you get seen and you have a long career, then people think of you and offer you stuff, or want you to audition for stuff. And the more work you do, the more work you get. Usually, that's the rule of thumb.
Yeah. Well, you've had, quite the amazing career, and congratulations on Hunters. Everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the Emmys, and stay tuned for more interviews throughout the season. Saul, it was a real pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, man.